Welcome to the Raise Your Energy podcast. My name is Linda Lange and I'm your host and energy expert. In this episode, I interview my dear friend Nicole Kincaid about her zone of genius, Stuffology. Nicole loves organizing, tidying, and putting things right. This odd propensity is her sacred ground. The challenge of sorting things out like junk drawers, thoughts, cupboards, digital information, garages, belief systems, anything that can be unraveled and untangled fascinates her. Nicole thrives on connecting with humans and their spaces, and she calls her unique spin on traditional organizing Stuffology. Listening to this episode, you will find out what Stuffology is and why it is different to traditional decluttering. You get so many tips and tricks that you can apply directly into your own living space. Let's get started. Right. Okay, welcome everybody. I am so honored to have Nicole here, my dear friend. And it is a pleasure to talk with her today all about Stuffology, and we will find out from her what that actually is and what it can help you with. So welcome, Nicole. I am so honored to have you here. Welcome. And I'm so happy and thankful for having you here.
Thank you. Same. Right back at you.
Yes. So let us start off with you actually introducing yourself a little bit and the audience getting to know you a bit more by maybe sharing with us about your story and actually your path in getting where you're at now and doing what you're doing, which is Stuffology. So how did you get there? Tell us a bit more.
So I've always been a person that I say that organizing is in my DNA. Like I just have always been that way ever since I've been a little kid. I have liked to have things a certain way, and I am kind of that person where anytime I go into a new room or a new environment, I'm just always looking for how it could be like, oh, this is what I would do differently or whatnot. But what happened is that I moved around a lot as a child. And I went to 13 elementary schools and 4 junior high schools. And then I moved in with my father and things started to settle down. But, you know, Linda, the interesting thing was that all that moving around, it gave me this way of making my world safe. And because I would, not the moving around part, but the unpacking and the putting my bedroom, in order. It was like there was this really chaotic environment that I lived in, but I would just spend all of this time making sure that my bedroom was perfect, just so, and then I would unpack and just very, very great, great detail. And that just made me feel like things were going to be okay, Mm-hmm. And then when I was 19 years old, my mom sent me over to her best friend's house, who was going through a really, really, really difficult divorce. And this woman had been kind of bedridden for a couple months and was going through pretty serious depression. And then she had found out that she also had to sell her home. So she had lived in the home for years and had raised her kids there. And my mom was like, you need to go over and help her because she just can't do that on her own. I go, okay. So I went over and, I knew that I could help her. I knew that I had I had these mad skills of organization and whatnot. But what came up for me when I started to work with her was just how much other support she needed too, in the way of being truly listened to and witnessed. And she's going through 20 plus years of memories and belongings and all of this visual representation of this life that she was dismantling. And wow. I found, I don't know how I knew this as a 19-year-old, but there was a lot of time where I was just quiet with her and just letting her have her moments of processing what she needed to go through in order to make this monumental shift in her life. And that is how I started off doing this work for other people. Was with her.
Wow. That is amazing. That means that you've got to your calling, so to say, really early in your life already, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
That's
Yes.
And how did it develop? I mean, sometimes we can meet our calling quite early, but then don't go with it, right? We might not follow our path very much. How did you go then on that journey with that calling, with that fire that got ignited? How did you keep going, or did you go in and out? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it wasn't like a straight line, right?
Yeah.
I went to college. I was always kind of like, well, I know how to do that, but it's not like I'm going to make a living out of it. It was kind of how I felt.
Yeah.
But but I did. I went on to college, and then I would do it sort of as a part-time job, but I also had like regular part-time jobs too. But what really was the rebirth of this work, where it really started to like makes sense for me to offer it to offer it in a bigger way, I guess, was when in about 20 years ago, I got really, really sick, and I didn't know what was going on. And I went to all the doctors, Linda, and I got all the blood work done, and I got the scans, and I know the doc, like there wasn't any container that fit my symptoms in in Western medicine. So I so I was like, well, I had this moment where the doctor told me what she thought it was. She sat me down and she was like, I think this is months and months later, like we've been going on trying to figure it out, right? And she finally said, I think what's going on is that you're depressed. And I had this like kind of like an out of body experience, where I was watching myself with this conversation that was going on between me and this doctor. And what I said to myself was, you're not depressed. She just doesn't know. And that's okay. Like I was really resolved. But what happened in that moment was I also knew that I had to sort it out. I had to figure it out. I had to go find out why I didn't have any energy. That was really the nature of my illness, is I didn't have any energy, right? So I ended up going to this program. I live in Seattle, Washington, in the United States. And I ended up going to this post-grad program here at this naturopathic university in my area. And they were offering a program called Spirituality, Health, and Medicine. And that is when I started learning about energy. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. And so I started healing. I started getting better. And I was really aware of why I was getting better. But then I had to go back out and work. And I always remembered that like I liked doing that work with people, like in the traditional terms, it's called clutter clearing and organizing, right? And I liked doing it. But I remember, Linda, that I'd always felt like really depleted after I worked with people. Like I was always oh my God, I was so heavy, right? I mean, because it is heavy, I mean, it's heavy duty work. And so I started going out and working with people, doing this work called clutter clearing and organizing traditionally. But I was really compelled about what would happen if I approached it from more of an energetic point of view, and really just listened to people more about what was going on in their own environments and what they said about what they have and their stuff, and kind of did more of a journey with them, and then wrapped that up all into the container of me really knowing that I had the skill set to be able to navigate them through to more order. And that's how that all got started. So I started And then I changed the name of it to Stuffology because I was like, that makes way. I didn't want people just to think I was going to come over and do it for them. You know what I mean? That's not what I do. You know what I mean? Or that I was going to tell them they couldn't have, you know, they could only have this many T-shirts, or you can only. It's like I don't do it that way, you know. And so I needed to come up with a different language for it, and I did. And that's what I've been working on pretty much ever since. I had some rerouting here and there, but this is definitely the work I'm supposed to be doing.
That is so beautiful. And thank you for sharing your journey in that regards, that how you went through a more difficult part in your life and how you got to a new way of actually doing it, right? It helped you to create something new. And of course, energy. Hey, we love the topic of energy, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we do.
That building it into it. And from what you've just already told us, it seems like you're kind of even more of a coach and a listener, right? A spiritual listener when you go and help people. So can you tell us a little bit? Most people probably know by now the concept of the decluttering and organizing from TV shows and from books that are out there. So tell us a little bit more of how Stuffology is different from this traditional method that most people know about. So give us a bit of a distinction.
Yes. So I am fully aware that I have this really defined skill set around how to organize and how to declutter. The new buzzword for decluttering, which I really, really love, is actually called editing. And I actually love that word.
Yes.
So home editing. But I do it very differently because for one, I don't work without the clients there. And I know that seems like an odd thing. Well, of course you don't, but like, there are, a lot of professional organizers that will go in and just whoosh, I don't do that. And so when I go in and work with people, we do have a conversation because I want to know why they have what they have. And so, I truly feel like when I'm successful at my job, working with a client, I feel like it's because they have come up with all of the answers and information that they needed to get to in order to have the space. Not me saying, like, the example I always use is that, like, I'm leaving at the end of the day. Like, it doesn't help for me to help you set up your environment according to what I think you should do. That doesn't make any sense. Like, let's figure out what you do, like how you are in your space, and like you and I were having a conversation last week around just countertops. And I mean, I know this sounds really obvious, but like everybody, like there's a whole range. I mean, everybody's so different. You know what I mean? There's a whole range of people who, this whole kaleidoscope of different personalities and how we prefer things in our environment. But you know what, Linda, we don't actually give ourselves permission to have that. We think that, like, oh, this person that designed that, that the organizing system at the department store, that's how you're supposed to organize. So we don't allow ourselves to like investigate, well, how do I want my environment to look? And that is very much what my conversation looks like with clients. Really about like telling them that's not going to work for you because you don't even like operate that way. Like that doesn't make sense for who you are. We've got to find systems that work for who you are so that when I leave, they hold. Does that make sense? Like they don't fall apart.
It makes so much sense. And I think what I'm starting to connect is as well, like your personality and the space you're living in. And I know we talked about it last week, and I probably just make the connection now that, quite often we just live with what we're given, right? Like we just have that amount of counter space and we try to get as much or as little into it. But I've never thought about too much of bringing in my personality and my preferences and from other areas of my life into my home. I know what I like and what I don't like, but I've never thought about my personality in my home. And I think that is just, it must be just so much more fulfilling and to live in that space, right? When you've worked with you, for example, who really helps you to understand your preferences and bring it into your own space. It's just, it sounds like magic.
Yeah. Well, what you do is you remove a lot of the aggravation and resistance and frustration and irritation when you set up your environment, your home space or whatever space, you could be an office space, to reflect you. You know what I mean? And when you don't set it up that way, you do get irritated in your own spaces, and your own space, like your very own home. Like, don't we want that to be like so comfy and or so like the way that we want it? Well, whatever those words would be. Like, that's how one of the questions I ask people, like, how do you want your home to feel? Like, what's the experience you want to have here? And you know, some people are like, I just want it to be like a little sanctuary. And some people are like, I want it to feel really productive and like real, you know, for it to just emanate creative energy or whatever. But it's really important that people give themselves permission to have things the way that they want to have them. And speaking of this, like, oh, how am I different? Like, I always tell my clients, you don't have to get rid of anything you don't want to get rid of. Like, they're like, what? You know, like, what do you mean I don't have to get, and I'm like, yeah, you can keep whatever you want to keep, like, because it's your stuff, you know what I mean? And you get to make those choices. But there's a conversation we're going to have around why you have what you have. That's going to help you then parcel out, is this stuff really still relevant for your life? Like, do you want to carry it into your present, do you want to have it in your present and carry it into your future? Like, do you want it taking up space in your space? And that's really an important thing, because you know what, Linda, a lot of people live in spaces they don't like, or they don't even love. They just like think that's the way it's supposed to be, and it's not. Isn't that weird? I mean, that just blows my mind. Like, you can even just do little things to like bring in, you know, have an environment that you like more, but to like not like your space, like that's my driving question of like, what's going on here where you're not like jiving with your space, or like you don't like it. Like, let's have that conversation. Oh, well, it's this. I hate the way it feels over here. And and it's like, so we very little bit at a time take that apart and have that conversation about it.
It's amazing. And I would say that as a person who has not much given it a thought, is that how many spaces do I have in my home where I just live with what is there, right? And maybe with some resistance, maybe with frustration, with aggravation, instead of asking myself, what do I want it to be? So I for sure, after our recording in the next few days, will go with open eyes and open feelings through my home and try to find these spaces, because like, we're living in this space, we're existing in this space, we're paying for this space. Why should we not feel better in it? I just love it. So how does that kind of work? Tell me a little bit more about how that works when you live with a partner. Like, let's not talk about kids, but just if you have two adults in a household. So how do you work with people, and how do you get them on board or on the same page?
Yes, that is a really big topic. It's actually kind of an advanced topic, because it is way more simplified when you're just working with one person and their things and their stuff, you know. But the truth is, most people share space, and you do then have to have that conversation around what's that going to be like. And I oftentimes call it a negotiation. And I don't mean,
Yeah.
and it's not that anyone has to relent or, well, that, this is just the way they are going to have it. I guess I don't get what I want. But I do have some tools that I do use with couples or partners or husbands and wives, because I think a lot of times there can be some bad feelings between people, and
Yeah.
where they have just sort of like come to terms with just, well, my husband's, tool room is just always going to be like that. And every time I walk through that area, that, that's just gonna, that's just, there's nothing I can do about it. Right. But when you start changing the conversation and reminding people that they really do like and love that person that they live with, and then you give them a tool to have a conversation with the other person around, okay, let's say we're in the kitchen and I do this thing called roam your home. And it's when you dial way, 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 way down and only work on little tiny areas. Because otherwise, if you work on big areas and sadly, clutter clearing and organizing has gotten caught up in this cleaning, tidying up category, and people, because they get so overwhelmed by, having stuff and a mess. I'm going to get back to your question, by the way, but I have to explain this first. They put it into this whole, well, we'll just do it on the weekend. We'll get the things organized on the weekend. Well, the truth is that our spaces are always changing, just like we are.
Yeah.
And so just taking stressful weekends where we feel overwhelmed and not that happy about doing it and trying to jam in, organizing into that, it doesn't really work that well. So I invented this thing called Roam Your Home, and it's meant to be like a lifestyle tool, like where you just use it, like when you feel like, I want to, like something catches your attention and you're like, I want to get back to that, because you size it down to like a little tiny area, or an area of your choice. And then you give yourself a time parameter, because the trick of Roam Your Home is leaving the project when you still have gas in your tank and you still feel really good. Like leaving it with an elevated emotion. Like you're like, oh my God, that felt so good. But most people don't do
so
that.
good, yeah.
They leave, like they just go, go, go. I got to get it done. We've got this one weekend to organize a stupid garage, blah, blah, blah. Right? And then they feel, those are all like survival emotions down there. Those are all like, and I very much believe that Stuffology is about creation. It's about like feeling good about our spaces, about implementing wonder and and positive, good feeling emotions into our space, so they can reflect that back to us, right? So when I work with couples, say I'm doing that Roam Your Home, and we get to let's say the refrigerator. And say you've got a couple and they just operate really differently with how they want it organized. One of the things that I will ask them is, okay, for you on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is this refrigerator to you? And I go, and I want you to be really honest. Just give me your number of I really have to have this be a certain way, or I can be kind of flexible, or it's okay. And then I churn to the other person with them there. They're both there. And I'm like, okay, you just heard their number. Now you remember that you love this person and you like this person, and you're with this person for a reason, even if they're a roommate. I mean, hopefully you live with the person you like, right? Now I want you to say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important to you is it that how important is this area to you? Is this refrigerator to you? Linda, I've never had two people come up with the same number,
Really not?
because they see,
Wow.
really not, because they see in that moment with what the person just shared, because it's never just a number. They go, oh, it's a 7 to me. I mean, it would be great if it looked a certain way, but it doesn't. I mean, it's just more like irritating, you know. And then the other person is like, it's a 9. Like I just have to have it be. Oh, really? You're a 9? And they figure out something with one another, and it's like, oh my God, I didn't know you're a 9.
Yeah.
But then that doesn't mean that that person who has the higher number gets to have everything be their way. It just means that they get to be the lead on the project.
Right.
And they get to be the final decision maker if there's a sticky point. But
the other person can still say something, give their input.
Totally involved. Yeah. And they really love that because it gives them involvement. And you know what? It gives them connection to one another. They feel like they're being heard, like I'm still going to get a say in this. And, but they are okay with deferring to the other person who has the higher number. I worked with a man one time who, was going through a divorce and, was moving into his own place. But one of the things that he told me about when he was married was that, and so he needs some help like organizing his home, right? Because he had no idea. And he goes, and he told me this story, and I literally almost cried when he told this to me because he told me that he left for work one day and he came home and his wife had like painted like their bedroom like this crazy color, you know, like that he would never, and then just reorganized everything. And he had no idea she was going to do that. And he was like, oh my God. He literally felt so heartbroken because he was just like, I have to live in this room too. That color is like, I never would have picked that color.
Oh, wow.
And now we got I was like, oh, and it just really illustrated to me like how much we really do need to involve the other people in our lives, in our spaces, because we share space. You don't want to build in resentment or frustration or anger or like resignation. You want there to be some win-wins. You want people to be like, yeah, you know, this isn't perfect, but she was a 9 and I was a 7, so I can work with that. Like that feels like better, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. You need to be some kind on the same page, even if you don't agree on everything, but you minimum need to check in before you do something like that. Yeah. So I can feel for him, even if you might not be that engaged in how your house looks like, but coming into a bedroom where you want to rest and have a color that you really dislike. Yeah, if I imagine myself having that experience, that wouldn't be good. No, absolutely not.
No, because you want to cultivate connection and cooperation with each other, you know, and that did not do so, you know, and I think about, honestly, like these weren't so emotionally loaded, but I used to have this client who would have me, this is so long ago, but she had moved into like this high-rise apartment. She was such a cool lady, and I moved her in, I unpacked her. And then she called me like a couple months later and she was like, can you come over and do your thing? She'd always be like, come over and do your magic, Nicole, do your magic. And I'd be like, okay. So I would go over there. She would be at work and I would organize her whole space for her. I would just go throughout her space and go do, 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 do. And then Linda, she would call me in like another couple months. And every time I would go back, it would be worse than the time that I went there before. Like it would be there'd be more disorder. And I was like, after a while, I was like, what is going on here? And I was like, I know what's going on here. And what's going on here is that she loves walking in the door at the end of the day. And after I'd been there and seen everything like totally pristine, but
Yeah.
it's as if I was going to live there, not her, because I had set up
Ah.
her environment for all of my systems. You know what I mean?
Oh, right.
Like, like the whole place just looked like but it's like like I didn't even know anything about her. It's like, like if you even think about if you're right-handed or if you're left-handed, and like how that impacts
Ah.
how you like go like this in your closet with your clothes when you're looking for a blouse, or you go like this. Like, you've
Mm.
got to really observe people. Because if you like, do you have all of your clothes hanging in the same direction? Like all the openings, like are all the openings to your clothing, are they facing all one direction?
Yeah, most of them are. I like to have them like the openings look to the left. Yes.
Yes, me too. Are you right-handed?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so that makes sense because you're going in and then you're going whoop because your dominant hand is right. You know what I mean? And so you're going like
Right.
that. Yes. So what if she was left-handed? I'm just saying. And
Oh
so
yeah.
every time she goes into her closet, she's like, but she doesn't realize it because she's just paid me to do this. It looks great, because we haven't had
Yeah.
that deeper conversation. So she's like, but then there's some people they want to slide to the left. There's some people,
Yeah.
and there's some people that like it doesn't matter what you do. I
Mm.
mean, if they're left-handed, right-handed, or ambidextrous, you are never in a million years going to get them to like hang their clothes with them facing the same, like that's just not who they are. So you
Yeah.
have to know who you're working with and like then be able to set up systems that help them be, and their partners and their family members be in a better, feel good around their home, feel good in their home.
And I think that's a good point as well. And you mentioned it earlier already to talk about systems and your system, and it wasn't her systems. And I had once before a person who came in. It was actually like a pilot program for something like the Home Edit in Germany, and she came in and she selected me to come in and do my kitchen and a really big closet. But she did it more in the traditional way that you just described was a bit different, whereas she did it kind of all for me. And then, of course, 1 year later, it wasn't like that anymore. So
Exactly. Exactly. That is exactly what
that
I
I think
mean.
that yeah, that was exactly it. I mean, it looked all amazing and I was so
Mhm.
happy. And for a few months, I was able to keep it like that. But let me just give you one example. She put all of my high heels in like see-through boxes, all put on top of each other. And it took a huge amount of space in that wardrobe with all of that see-through boxes, right? And of
Uh-huh.
course, what happens 1 year later, first of all, I don't wear them very often. So they got pushed to the back and then other stuff was in front of it because I needed the space. And I
Yes.
couldn't just keep that space for shoes that I hardly ever wear. And then bit by bit over time, the see-through boxes were used for other things instead of shoes
Mhm.
because I needed the space or I needed the box. So yeah, I guess there is something else that needs to be done, of course, to set people up for success, right?
Oh my God, that is literally such a perfect example. Because had she had a conversation with you about who you are, oh my God. I mean, think about
Yeah.
all of like, and this is what people do to themselves, Linda. We have this place called Target here. Do you guys have Targets in
Yeah.
Germany? Yeah. They go to Target and they look at all of those organizing systems and they watch the TV shows and then they set up, okay, you guys, that person in Bangladesh that created that organizing system, that intelligent engineer, they have no idea who you are. But we
Yeah.
don't know where our systems are because we don't know the right questions to ask, and we're not used to self-observing. We're already in overwhelm, and then we're stressed out because we feel like we have to cram organizing into these weekends or whatever, and we think we should be able to do it ourselves, so we don't ask for help. Oh my gosh, I think everybody should get a home organizer help once a year. Like, just do like a nice brush up in your place, because then they go and they spend time and money and energy implementing systems that people who don't even know you invented. And there's nothing like I post on my social media like all the time, like often, I should do it more, of those perfectly organized refrigerators or perfectly organized closets that I see organizers post. And I always say, like, hey, everyone, I just want you to know I've been organizing for over 30 years. No one's closets look like this. No one, not even like my mom, my stepmom, who was the most organized person on the planet. Like, even she had her own little idiosyncrasies in her own closet and her own systems
Yeah.
that didn't have that like look of perfection. So people need to give that up and then like realize, for example, I don't have all of my pants hung up. I have some of my pants hung up. I have some of them folded. I have some of my sweaters hung up, but then I have lighter weight sweaters hung up and I have heavier weight sweaters
Yeah.
folded. I mean, it just depends. But when you work with people and you ask them probing questions, they will give you all of these answers. And then you can figure out
Yeah.
the systems. And it's all, the whole reason behind all of this inquiry is because when your home feels really, really good, it then is powered on and it starts to like then be able to support you more because you don't have like this energy of resistance and fatigue or frustration or irritation lingering all around you, and you can go more quickly into your creative self.
That is so perfect. And I think that's something as well. I mean, I've always been a fairly tidy person, but I think I've just learned as well recently that how it is connected, that I'm calm and collected inside of me and in my mind, but then the outside has to kind of mirror that. And vice versa. So if my outside, my home is not that, it has an impact on my mind and my state of being. And vice versa, if I am calm actually and I feel quite well, I'm like, okay, that needs to be tidied up. I need to finally deal with this. Yeah. It's like I feel like these two things are really heavily connected, and I don't think a lot of people know that. I mean, we know that a little bit from the Japanese word Zen, right? Where it's a bit talked about it, but I don't think a lot of people really see the seriousness in that. So I love that you mentioned that, because I feel like it as well, that if people say to me, oh, I'm so scattered, or I'm a bit confused, or I don't know where to go next, it's like, maybe start with tidying up your desk or putting your washing away and don't let it out there. Yeah. So, these kind of little things. So I feel it now more in my life as well, that it has a direct impact, the outside on the inside. Yeah.
Yes, and what you were saying too about you being already naturally organized. Well, it's funny because I call them the organized, disorganized people, and I don't mean that they're actually disorganized, but I mean that, like, for example, if I walked into an organized, disorganized home and they just had all of their glasses and all of their plates and all of their water glasses, or all of their wine glasses, all of their, martini glasses or whatever, all of that. And it all looked beautiful, right? But if you were to actually take everything out of that cabinet and then say, like, okay, let's make sure all of this is relevant to you. Relevant is the word I love to use, because and they were like, God, why do I have all of these wine glasses. Like I have like 24. Like I don't need them all here, or I don't need all of these water glasses, or I don't need, like, I don't want all of these, like, because all of a sudden they start seeing that even though it looked organized, it still, it looked flat. It didn't like have vitality because it was just like holding a place.
Yes.
Holding space. So I tell even organized people, I'm like, just go through your thing. Like, even if your closets are really organized, like I went through my closet the other day and I was like, oh my God, this is so funny. Like, I don't even wear, like I wear all the clothes in the center, but there was still, so like, and that's perfect. That's actually a pretty logical way to organize, is to put the things that you wear the most down the center of your closet, right? I mean, I see that a lot, right? But the outer edges, and so I just kind of took a pass at it, even though it looked really organized. Like they were all hanging straight, and I personally like to have pretty similar hangers because I just like the look of that visually. But I was like, oh man, like I just don't, like some of these things are truly not relevant anymore in my life. Like I just don't, I'm not even going to wear this. Ever. I think that is like ever.
Is, yeah. And while you were talking, I was just thinking about, I mean, the work that we both are doing as well is letting go of things, right? Like letting go of emotions, letting go of limiting beliefs. And it's kind of feels very much the same, because you're saying that somebody can be very organized and very tidy and it's all very clean, but it might just kind of be a mask. It's not your full personality. It's just what you like to portray to the outside, but it's not really who you are anymore. Maybe it was you 5 years ago, or it was maybe what you think that's who you're supposed to be, and that's how you're supposed to look like. But really, it's not truly you. So again, you kind of not feel that well, even that your house looks perfect to the outside.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that.
Okay, so on that note, like, our things very much hold energy. And that's why you want to take time and why you want to size down and do little bits at a time, because I call it the jack in the box. Like, you don't know what's going to come out at you. Like, you don't know if you're going to run into something that triggers off an emotional chain reaction that then you need to spend some time. You don't want to pass over. You want to metabolize it, right? So I had this dress in my closet. And I have had, Linda, I've had this dress for 25 years. But it's classic. It's just like this like sundress, really cute. And I finally, like, I looked at it and I'm like, okay, you haven't worn it in like 20 years, 20 plus years. Wow. And I just was like, I want to feel into this. Like, what is going on? Like, I mean, this is my life, and I still had to like pause. And I was like, oh, I am tapping into memories here. Because as soon as I took that dress out of I looked at it and I remembered that I wore it to a wedding that was down in California, it was a great wedding. There was a big party. I got to see all my friends from college. We danced. I remember exactly where I was sitting underneath a tent. And I just remember we just were up all night, And I was like, all of that, Linda, was in that dress. It was all in that dress. So subconsciously, I was holding onto the dress because like my consciousness was like, oh, you might wear it someday. But my subconscious was like, boom, 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 boom. The wedding, the fun, the people that I didn't want to let go of that memory.
Of course
not. So I was like,
of course not.
But do I have to? Then I thought to myself, all right, is there another option? Yes. You can just take a dang picture of the dress. actually like, and you're
Right.
going to look at that dress and remember, oh my God, that was a dress over there. So I did. And then I passed on the dress to someone else who, like there's this gals who I know who always do clothing exchanges. You just drop off a bag,
Mm.
you go, and then while you're there, you just go through the other bags and see if you want anything.
Yeah.
And I was like, how many of those things do people have in their lives? That
Oh,
is
yeah.
that's the question, and that's a really different conversation, circling back to traditional organizing and clutter clearing, because that is when you realize that those conversations are all over your space. You realize
Yeah.
that your space might be more about your past than it is
Yeah.
about your future.
Yes. And I think that's absolutely fine with the dress example that you just had because it holds a good memory, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the same time that it holds some space for over 20 years in your closet and you found a way to let go of it. But the question asks itself to the people who are watching or listening to this as well, how many things do you have in your house, in your space, that holds maybe not so nice memories and emotions, right?
Yeah.
But you still keep onto it because you think you have to, or you feel connected to it. You can feel connected to something that maybe carries some not so nice emotions, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or you
Perfect.
don't know until you start looking into it. I'll tell you one more quick example because it's so.
Yeah,
I worked
yeah.
with this man who'd gone through again another. I mean, divorces are a thing, right? So I worked with a man who went through a pretty traumatizing divorce, and we were going through his closet, and he'd moved in. He was like moving into a loft, and so he had less space, but he didn't have that much. He hadn't taken that much. And he had already had all of his clothing lying in his closet. Like he had unpacked his clothing. And I go, hey, do you want to just do a pass at that? And he was like, yeah, we might as well. And his whole closet, like a big, like two big doors closet, was all filled with clothing. And while we were working in this closet, this man became like emotionally enraged and so and I was totally fine with that because what he had realized is that all of the clothing his ex-wife had picked out, and she had said,
Oh,
this is how you should dress, this is what this is what you should wear to work. Like he
oh
hadn't bought,
wow.
and he didn't even like these clothing, right? I swear, Linda,
Oh, crazy.
I'm not even kidding. This man literally had like 8 pieces of clothing left. Like he was literally like I was like, whoa, throwing them. Like, I don't want this. I don't want that. I mean, and his exhalation of energy, like just like he was literally like
Amazing.
emoting and releasing on such a deep level. And oh man, he did some beautiful work. And I was like, I don't do this very often, but I was like, okay, you've got like 8 pieces of clothing left. Are you going to be okay with that? I'm usually like, yes, that's great. And he was like, I'm so okay with it, Nicole, because it was all about this person that he was no longer and never had been.
Yeah. And if you just imagine if that person would have just never gone through that with you and got the help or had this idea, right? So he could have lived for the next 20 years with these clothes that were not him, and every time he opens the doors, he just gets reminded of his ex-wife or the situations or whatever is in there, right? And so
Exactly.
again, the question is how many people live with something like that in their house and think that's just how it has to be.
So many.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why
Yeah.
it's important to be so gentle with ourselves too. And so, and to take things in such bite-sized pieces and to be really be explorative around your space, and I know this sounds crappy, but like I actually do tell people, don't get your friends to help you, because your friends are always going to tell you, just get rid of it, just get rid of it. You know what I mean? Like you gotta,
It's so personal, right? It's just so personal.
It really is.
Yeah.
If people could even just, if they're, for listeners, if they could train people to say, ask me these questions, or like, I really want like you just to sit there and be with me while I go through this, because this might be hard. I mean, that's a different process. Mm-hmm.
That's
or
beautiful.
I don't know what I'm going to come up against here, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that is so beautiful. Just being there for people while they go through it. That is such a different way of looking at it than helping in the sense of throwing stuff out. Yeah.
When people get
perfect.
Stuck, Linda, my number one question is always like, tell me about that. Like, tell me the story of it. Like, just tell me about it. And they're like, well, and they go into it. Kind of makes me feel emotional, because I'm remembering so many, and it's a totally different track, because they're trying to figure out, do I keep it? Do I not keep it? And I'm like, just tell me about it. And that is the start of their process around. They then come to the decision themselves. They know what they're going to do with it after they've worked with some of the information around it.
And while there may be as well the sharing of just going one more time through that memory or that emotion, through that story, maybe helps them as well to finally let go. And like you said, it helps them to make that final decision. Do I still need that in my life, or can I let go of it? Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
So I just want to talk as well briefly about, I know that you, of course, help people one-on-one, like you help people in so many places, but of course not all around the world. But I know that you have now as well a course that people can attend wherever they are in the world. So tell us a little bit about that, because I love that you can literally learn from you now all what we've talked about, and actually live, let's say, in Singapore or Australia.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I love working with people, and my favorite way to work with people is teaching on my online classes. I really love it, because there's a group of people, and then we do sharing. There's sharing that happens. But yes, I offer a class that's called Stuffology 101, Your Organizing and Decluttering Journey. My next course is starting January 10th, because I'm in progress right now with a course. So it starts January 10th. And it's a 5-week journey. And we go through week by week, my principles and my not my rules, because I don't like do that, right? But like how to get started, how to all the format. And they then do the homework in between the weeks, and it's really great. And I really love teaching this course, and people get a lot out of it, and they are so excited to come back week after week and share. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is what I worked on. And then, how much time did you spend? 15 minutes. And I'm like, that's great. And, and we get to share how it was for them. And then they get to build like an energetic muscular system around how to keep doing it that way.
Perfect. This sounds amazing. So tell us quickly how people can find you. Where are you? Where can they find you and find out more about you, but as well the course?
The easiest way is NicoleKincaid.com. It's like everything stems out of that. So if you wanted to find my Instagram page, go to NicoleKincaid.com, and all of my social media links are on my webpage. And under courses on NicoleKincaid.com is my most recent course is my course that's going to start up again on January 10th.
Perfect. And I think everybody should attend it. I know I will, if once you offer it at a time that is not in the middle of the night when I sleep.
Yes. I will do that. I'm going to offer a course that's in the morning. Yes, absolutely.
Perfect, because I will attend that one for sure.
Perfect.
So check it out. We will put all the links to the website and to all the social media into the show notes. So check out Nicole, check out her course predominantly, but of course get in contact with her as well if you live in her area and if you want to book her to come and help you let go of some emotions and some memories that you might not want to have anymore. So thank you so much, Nicole. And stuff. Oh yeah, stuff as well.
That feels really good when you get stuff.
Yes. Oh, I love it. I love it so much. So thank you so much, Nicole. It was such an honor. And I think we talked about so many different layers that are all in stuff and in Stuffology. And I just love to learn from you. And yeah, it was a pleasure to having you on the podcast. And I hope we have you back at some point. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Linda.
Okay, good. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.